Hey yogis, today we're just going to do a little bit of a tutorial on splits pose. So it doesn't matter where you are in this pose, it's a really great hip opening quad stretch and there's lots to learn. And it's not like the journey of yoga ever ends. Even if you get into splits pose, there's still stretching and realigning and finding your way into that space that's going to make a difference into your practice. So where do we get started? I always think it's a really great idea to warm up. So move through a couple of sun salutations, sun sal A, and then maybe sun sal B, so that you're working into some of that hip opening space. And the first place we're going to come to is our downward facing dog, and we're going to take Hanumanasana. So coming into our downward facing dog, just a little bit of a lift of that right foot. So we're going to step it forward and drop that back left knee. Uncurl the toes. And you can start to press that back shin into the mat. I'm going to engage into my core here, because what I don't want to do is just flop down into that space. I'm going to start tracking both knees towards the midline, so I'm keeping the hips nice and square. What that's going to mean when you get into your splits, you're still going to keep that square shape instead of opening up into that open hip or more warrior two space. So grounding that back left shin into the mat. I've got my toes uncurled. You can tuck the toes under. And I'm going to start to draw into the belly, so belly towards the spine, so I can feel that shortening of the distance between the ribs and the hips. And you just saw my knee track to the center then, so I'm pulling that in. And I feel this scissoring action in my hips here. So I'm not letting that right hip slide forward, but I'm feeling that squaring of the hips. And I'm going to get that action by pressing that foot into the back, and I'm also going to start drawing this front foot back towards my hips so that I can actually engage into the hamstring here. I'm going to inhale the breath, and I can keep my hands on my hips for this space. Again, there goes that tracking of the knee towards the midline and the drawing of that right hip back in space. Belly comes to spine, shortening of the distance between the ribs and the hips, and I can feel that stretch already into that left hip flexor. From here, I can start to drop into that space. Now, you're naturally going to have a little bit of a curve in the back body here, in that lumbar spine. But what we don't want is that big curve, so that you're letting go of the belly here. So again, little micro adjustments, and you can start to drop forward into that space, really feeling that beautiful stretch through that front hip flexor. So this is your Hanumanasana. To go a little bit deeper and find our way into more of a quad stretch in this space, I'm going to bring my hands down towards the mat. Left hand down because my left foot's down, and I'm going to reach around with my right hand for my right foot. So I'm getting more of a quad stretch here. Now, if I open my hips, so I'm rolling onto my right foot, see how I've lost that squareness in the hips. So what I want to do is bring that back to the center and still feel like I'm tracking the midline. So I'm bringing the knee back into the center here and pulling that heel in towards the butt. And that's giving me that quad stretch in here. Now, if any time that knee's getting sore in the back, feel free to either double your mat over, make a little knee donut. You'll see my highly entertaining video on knee donuts. And that's gonna help you out just a little bit in that space. So again, I'm gonna reach around here, and you can see that squaring of the hips. I'm pulling my right hip back in space, and I'm pulling that heel in towards the butt. Now, if you don't reach here, towel, strap, belt, anything, all of the above. Again, belly into the spine, and you can start to drop down into that space, feeling that support and feeling that stretch very much through the quadricep. So I'm going to release that foot down now. I'm going to come up into a little bit of a lizard lunge. So I can shift my right foot out towards the side of the mat a little bit more, bring my hands underneath my shoulders, but inside the right foot. And from here, I'm going to start to draw my hips down towards the earth. I'm still finding some length in the upper body, core still engaged in the midline, and I'm sending my back heel towards the back of the mat. And I'm feeling that beautiful stretch again through the front of the hip flexor here. But this time too, you can see I'm almost halfway into this splits pose here. So just with that front foot support. So I can drop a little deeper here. Again, we don't want to let that knee fall out to the side. We want to very much track that through the midline. So again, drawing that back right hip back in space and coming down, little adjustments along the way. I'm going to drop my back left knee down again. So our next variation is walking that foot back into the center. We're going to start to stretch that hamstring more in the front leg. So you can either leave the toes curled here, or you can uncurl the foot. I'm going to flex this front right foot this time, and I'm going to sit back into that hip and feel that stretch through my front right hamstring. So I'm just going to show you a couple of variations here. Get that out of the way because I don't really need it right now. I like the toes tucked because it just allows me to send my hips back and get a little bit more of an arch in my spine, which for me is going to get more of a stretch into my hamstring and a little bit of a back bend here. So if you're not quite in that space yet, this is where we get our good friends, the blocks, and you can use those to support the body until you find a little bit more space in this half Hanumanasana. And you can move forward again, give yourself a little bit of relief into Anjaneyasana, and you can send the hips back into your half Hanumanasana. So again, a couple of variations here. I'm just going to move the blocks to the side, but feel free to use those if you would like. I'm going to pull my toes back towards the nose. You can leave them pointed in the first variation if you want to increase that stretch both into the calf and to the hamstring. I'm going to walk my hands forward a little bit, send my hips to my heel, still trying to square everything down. And inhale, I'm going to look beyond my toes. So that way I'm extending through the back body and I can feel that little back bend happening there as well. I'm going to press up. And I step my left foot a little bit closer this time and find a little bit of a pyramid pose. So again, squaring through the hips, gazing forward. Exhale and releasing down. Inhale to lift, and you can feel that squaring of the hips happening. Exhale and down we go. So coming into splits pose. We've stretched our quadricep, our hamstring, our hip flexor, a little bit into our calf. So we're going to come into splits now. So if you would like, you can use the blocks to support you if you're going to feel like there's a challenge in this space. And you can drop that back knee down, point the foot. I'm really using some pressure into the blocks here, and I can lift up. So here I've got the ability to adjust the hips so I can feel my way into that space. Now you might still be here with the foot on the floor. You might be way back here, and that's perfectly okay because everything is a work in progress. So start to move down. If you don't need the blocks, you can simply send those away and start to sit down into that space. You can feel a little bit of movement here. And there we are, splits pose. Enjoy.